Good morning, everyone. This is your 5 minute warning. Hey, Paul. Hi, Nancy. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes. President Hardgrave is already here, so we'll be on time in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the September edition of SALT after a nice break for the summer, and I appreciate those of you who are here for Jeff Calkins back in August when we kicked back off, and we got some great feedback there, and you're going to love today's speaker. Let me make a couple of announcements before we get going. I want to thank ME back there and for helping us, as usual, get the sign in. I want to thank Debbie and the kitchen staff for having the lunch ready, and hope many of you can stay. As you know, there's no charge for the lunch, but if you're able to stay, if you can consider a $7 donation, that is just an exact pass-through of the cost of the luncheon, so we'd appreciate that. Brother Chris Carter is typically with us, but he's out of town with Pastor Paul, and Reverend Grant Caldwell is with us today. So Grant, we appreciate you being with us. We just really appreciate all of you making time out of your schedules to be with us. And today we have a wonderful, wonderful speaker and a new addition to our community. As all of you know, I'm a two-time graduate of the University of Memphis. My wife, Barbara, is a graduate of the University of Memphis, and we've loved that school for a long, long time. And we think that and know that we've had some of the great presidents that any university has ever been blessed to have. But now we have our 13th president, and he is Dr. Bill Hardgrave. He and Rhonda are in town with their children, Rachel and Gavin, and they're a tremendous addition already to our city, to our community, and to our university. Dr. Hardgrave saw the printed material that we had sent out, and he said, surely you're not going to read all that, and so I won't. I will do more than say, here's Bill, though. I will say that Barbara and I think Bill's been here since April of 2022, and he's hit the ground running, and those of you who are keeping up with what's going on with college athletics or R1 designations or whatever, and Bill will talk about that, it's an incredibly fast-paced job. But he's been busy. And I will say that a couple of months before the announcement, Barbara and I were in Atlanta during Valentine's of 2022 to have the joy of hearing Andrea Bocelli sing a great concert. And the next morning we got up before we drove home, and there was a gentleman getting coffee at the Starbucks, and he had a big Auburn sweatshirt on, and I had my Tiger baseball sweatshirt on, and I can't remember who spoke first, but we got into a quick conversation, and he basically said, you guys are blessed to have Bill Hardgrave coming your way. He's a brilliant guy. He's been a great provost at Auburn. He's been a great SVP of the College of Business there. He had been 17 years prior to that and the University of Arkansas at the Sam Walton School of Business. But what he said that meant so much to me was he loves sports, and that touched a chord with me, and he has proven that every day, and we've been talking about that. So I hope that's part of his presentation. Without anything further, the president, the 13th president of the University of Memphis, Dr. Bill Hardgrave.
Thank you, Allie. All right. Are we on? We good? Can you hear me? Fantastic. Well, thanks for the kind introduction, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. I do want to spend time for Q&A, but I'll give you a little background, and then feel free to jump in at any time to ask questions, but we'll have some time at the end as well. There was a survey that came out not too long ago that said that the toughest leadership job in America is a college president. Now that some of you should question my judgment as to why I have the job, but the reason it's so tough is that we have 22,000 students, and 5,000 faculty and staff. On any given day, somebody is doing something stupid. So it makes it tough. And in fact, when I decided I was going to take this job, I went in to tell my boss at the time, the president at Auburn University. He and I had been talking, went in and told him I was going to take the job, and he said, well, just remember the story of the new president when he came into this new university. And as he told it, new president came into this university, and the outgoing president told the new president, look, there will be days when things are going to go bad. And when you have one of those days, I've left you 3 envelopes in the desk drawer. And so this new president was on the job a couple of months, and sure enough, it was a bad, bad day. So he went in and he opened that first envelope, and it said, blame the former president. And so he went out and said, it's just, all this went on, the former president, so we got it taken care of. So all was good. So he went a couple of months, and sure enough, something bad happened again. So he went in, he got that second envelope, opened it up, and it said, tell everybody you're going to restructure. So he went and announced, we know we've got some problems, so we're going to restructure and solve it. So went on a couple of more months, and yep, sure enough, something else went wrong. He went and opened that third envelope, and it said, prepare 3 envelopes. So I think with all this conference realignment and things going on, I'm down to 1 envelope. So thanks so much for having me today. I do want to talk about just higher education, if you'll allow me, just kind of what we're seeing in higher education. And I want to put it really in terms of a business. So imagine that you have a business where your customer base is shrinking. You have fewer customers for your business. The fewer customers that you do have don't even think that your product is very good. So over half of your customers don't even think your product is worthwhile. And you keep raising your prices every year. Now, how long would you be in business if your customer base was shrinking, your customers didn't appreciate your product, and you kept raising your prices? You wouldn't be in business very long, would you? That's actually where we find ourselves in higher education right now. We have fewer customers. We have fewer students, both from a sheer number of students, but also fewer and fewer students who are going to college. So let's talk about the first one of just fewer students. Over the past several years, we've had a trickling of fewer students. But in 2025, starting in 2025, for the next 3 or 4 years after that, we will see a drop-off of 18-year-olds in this country of 10 to 15%. Now think about that. 2025, we're going to start seeing fewer 18-year-olds. Well, subtract 18 from 2025, you get 2007, 2008, 2009. What happened? Great Recession. People stopped having kids during the Great Recession. So we're paying the price of the Great Recession. I shouldn't say the Great Recession, 2007, 8, 9. We're paying the price now for something that happened 18 years ago. So what we will see then is for about a 3 or 4 year period, we're going to see a decline across the country. Now, some parts of the country get hit harder than others. Tennessee is expected to see about a 12% decline. Now, that certainly has implications for me as a leader of a higher education institution. It has implications for everything. It has implications for the workforce. We're just going to have fewer young people available for the workforce. But in higher education, you think about a 10 to 15% drop over 3 or 4 years. That's a lot of students who are not going to be available to go to university. Now you couple that with the fact that we're seeing fewer and fewer high school graduates go to college. In the state of Tennessee, in the last 5 years, the going rate of those who graduate high school in the state of Tennessee has dropped from 63% to 52%. So now it's a double whammy, right? You've got fewer students and then a fewer, so the pie's getting smaller and the piece of the pie is getting smaller for those who are going to go to college. So that obviously has implications. And we've started to see some of that kind of leading indicators over the last few years. And we will see universities who will close their door. We're already starting to see universities who are closing their doors because there's just not enough students to go around. Now, we're not in any danger of that, but even where we're at here, we are starting to see our, what we call our domestic students population decline. It's actually declined over the past 5 years, just a little bit at a time, and we would expect to see that decline more again, and it started in 2025. So fewer students, fewer going, so your customer base is shrinking. And then for the first time ever, just within the last 5 or 6 years, the number of the percentage of parents and students who questioned whether a college degree was worth it has dropped below 50%. So fewer than 50% believe that a college education is worth it. And all that, at the same time, is public institutions and private institutions have been raising tuition. So fewer customers don't believe your product's worth it, and we raise our prices. Again, it's not a recipe for a very healthy business for sure. But in higher education, we have some work to do. Now, this idea of a college education not being worth it in today's environment, part of that's communication. Part of it is the robust job market that we have. I mean, I regularly talk to kids who are saying, well, I can go out making $25 an hour loading trucks or working in a distribution center, and I'll go do that for a little while. And the problem is when they do that for a little while, they usually don't come back. And I speak really from a position of experience when I know that the value of a college degree does matter. I grew up in Arkansas, just right down, if you go right down Interstate 40 here, go about an hour and a half on the other side of Little Rock, about an hour before you get to Oklahoma. Even if you're from Arkansas, I can guarantee you don't know where I grew up in Arkansas. I grew up in a little tiny town called Hunt, Arkansas. We were 7 miles to the closest paved road. There's 5 kids in the family, and I'm the first person in my family, and this is tracing it back on my mother's and father's side as far back as we could go, and including 2 older sisters and an older brother. I'm the first in my family to graduate high school. The plan for all of us, my 2 older sisters, older brother, and myself, and I have a younger brother who did graduate high school, but the plan was you need to get through the 9th grade, and then you're done. Of course, I messed that up, I guess, for the family, but I'll tell you that when we look at what the impact of education, and I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were asking me, what my motivation was for getting a degree. And part of it is my father was a construction worker, and my mother worked in a shoe factory when we still had shoe factories. And my dad was outside. He worked actually on the interstate highway system. He worked. He was a laborer, but he worked for a company that had got part of the contract going through there, and he built stuff for buildings and all kinds of houses, whatever. So that's outdoor. That's physical, hard labor. My mother worked in a shoe factory, and there was no heat. There was no heat and air in there. It was what it was. And so part of my motivation was to not have to work in those conditions, to work in a place that had air conditioning and heat, and have a roof over my head. And so, that when I look at the value of of higher education. And we have a lot of our students now who come from families who are first generation. And so these students don't really understand from their parents the value of that education because their parents didn't have a college education. So part of it is that communication and us letting students know the value of that. The flip side of that, of course, is it is expensive to go to a college. And, you know, part of the reason for that, especially for public institutions, is there's been a lot of talk about, well, you know, universities just raise tuition. It's been crazy how much it's increased. There's a reason for that. If you go back, actually starting about 25, 30 years ago, the states for a public institution like the University of Memphis, and I was at Auburn University before, and as I was saying, at the University of Arkansas, where they're all public institutions, the majority of the funding came from the state. In fact, about 80 cents on the dollar came from the state. So if you went to school then, and many of you I was talking to as it came in, I know you went to Memphis State at the time. You know, I don't know if you remember how much tuition was, but it was probably a couple of $100s. Do you remember how much tuition was?
In '59, it was $65 and $75 a semester.
Okay, there you go. And the reason why it was $65 and $75 a semester was the state was paying the bulk of it. And as a student, you didn't have to pay much. And so the burden used to fall on the state. So if you graph this thing, you would see that, you know, again, 25, 30 years ago, 80 cents on the dollar was coming from the state, and 20 cents on the dollar came from the student. Now it's reversed. 20 cents on the dollar comes from the state. 80 cents on the dollar falls to the students. So actually the cost to educate a student, inflation adjusted, hasn't changed that much, but the burden has shifted to the families away from the state to fund that. So that's why you see now, you know, our tuition actually is still a bargain, but it's, you know, it's $8,000. And that it is a bargain, but it's, you know, it has completely shifted as to who pays for it. But it does mean if you're a student and you're looking at going to university and you're thinking, okay, I've got tuition, I have to buy books, I have to have a dining card, parking. It's about, by the time you count your living and everything, it's about $20,000 to $25,000 a year. That's a big investment, right? By the time you count your 4 years, that's a $100,000 investment. So one of the things that we are focusing on, we have a new strategic plan, and it mentions there, is we are kind of flipping the way we think about our students. It's because for so long it's just been about, hey, let's just admit students, and then we wish them good luck, and we hope that they do well, and we'll guide them along the way if they need it, but you know, it's up to them to kind of figure out what they want to do when they're here. We have to flip that actually 180 degrees, and we have to start with the idea of the outcomes. What happens when a kid comes in here and they major in X? What happens? What kind of job did they get? Is it setting them up to go to graduate school? How does it prepare them? And you start with outcomes in mind, and then you work backwards from there. And you work backwards from, are we offering the courses that they need? Are we giving them workforce-ready training that they need? And training used to be a dirty word in higher education. I mean, I wouldn't even be able to say it out loud, you know, that long ago. But we need to talk about training. And we need then to talk about, you know, how we make sure that they have those skills, and then that tells us who we ought to be letting in. And that's actually changing how we look at that. Because the worst thing that we can do for a kid right now, given how much it costs and how fragile it is with especially first generation, is the worst thing we can do to a kid is let a kid in who is not prepared and they fail. Because if we let a kid in and they fail that first semester, even that first year, they've lost, we've lost, and it's likely that that kid will never come back to college. So we have to do a better job on the front end making sure that those kids are ready. And we actually started this fall utilizing our 2-year schools, utilizing some other mechanisms that we have to help bring some students up who may not quite be ready to be successful, to ensure that they're successful once they get in. And then when they get here, make sure that we are only offering majors, programs that lead to good outcomes. And that means we are going to be eliminating several programs that don't lead to good outcomes. We cannot do that to our students anymore. Again, it's changing the way we think, right? It's not just, hey, we're going to let you in. If you pick this major, well, that's up to you then, and it's on you if you pick something that doesn't lead to a good job. No, we shouldn't even be offering that. And so we're going to be eliminating those things so that we really get it down to those things that lead to those good outcomes for our students. Those things are not easy. Those things are always hard to do, but we have to do it. Yes, sir.
You're right on target for what my granddaughter's experiencing right now. She doesn't know what she wants to do, but she's taken 5 AP classes as a senior. What are you doing to help those people find out what they want to do?
Yeah. So one of the things, and that's exactly, it's a great question. I don't know if you all
Dr.
heard
Hardgrave,
it.
could
Yeah.
you repeat that
I will.
question?
So his granddaughter's experiencing the same thing. Doesn't really know exactly what she wants to major in. Has taken 5.
She would be good at
Yep.
whatever she chose, but she doesn't know.
Has taken 5 AP courses. So that's one of the things then that we have to build into that front end, is helping those students when they come in understand what major best fits them. And look, there's ways we can do that. We just haven't done it before. I mean, we have, whether it's putting them in, making sure some of those entry level classes, we put them in some things where, okay, actually we can give aptitude tests. Kind of tells you, hey, you kind of lean this way or this way. Well, maybe it's business. Well, we're going to put you in a business class, see how you like that. Or maybe it says you like science. Well, we'll put you in a biology class, see if you like that. We have to be more intentional rather than just kind of saying, hey, you're admitted, now good luck to you. Because that's the way it's worked in the past, and we can't do that. Now, one of the things I do want to mention, because you mentioned AP courses for your granddaughter, one of the things that we are doing more of is something called dual enrollment. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's actually something that's been growing over the past few years, and we are going to accelerate it significantly. Actually, we've seen it accelerate over the last couple of years. It's where students take a course in high school, but they actually take the course from us. But it counts toward, let's say they take an English class. It counts toward their high school English credit, but because they take it from us, it counts toward their English credit for us. And so what we're seeing now is students in high school who could come in with anywhere from 12 to 30 hours. That's anywhere from a semester to 2 semesters worth of work that they've already done. Now, how that's helping us, one is that if we can get these kids in high school starting to take some of our classes, they get a feel for what a college class is. It gives us some inroads into who may be interested, but it also gives them that head start when they get there, and we know if they're capable of taking college level classes. So those are huge wins, and so we're actually trying to do more of that with the high schools across the state, of making sure that they're offering our courses to their high school students so that they can take these dual enrollments. So focusing on outcomes, making sure that we have the right students coming in. We also have to make sure that they have a great experience when they're with us. Again, it goes back to what I told you about our customers, and students are our customers, that we have to make sure we've got a good product, and a part of that good product is a good experience where they're there, right? That the campus looks nice. And I don't know how long it's been since some of you have been through our campus, but if you haven't driven through our campus lately, I would love for you to come through. We have really worked hard over the last year or so to things like keeping the grass mowed and the flower beds weeded and planted, and just things that just make our campus look really nice, and it looks a lot better. That's part of that experience. But making sure that we have nice dorms. We need more of our students living on campus because we know that they're more successful when they live on campus than not, at least for that freshman year. So we've got to do more of that. And sports. Sports plays a huge part of that experience. But we have to be intentional about it. One of the things that happened when we were going through the pandemic was students forgot how to be engaged, or if they were new to college, they never knew how to be engaged. My son, check my time here, make sure I don't go too long. My son was one of those COVID kids, as we call them. His senior year in high school was the spring of 2020. And so he started college at Auburn University when we were completely locked down. So he didn't know what the college experience was like. And even his second year, when we were starting to open up a little bit, it still didn't feel right. It's really just now that it's back to what we're seeing that we all think about a college experience, that I think about a college experience. But many of these kids, they don't even know what that is. So when we talk about a good experience, we have to almost tell them and create it and push them into an experience because they just don't know what that is. A great example of this was football game. This group of students going through now, they don't know what it's like to really be a part of going to football games. And I know that sounds weird, but it doesn't. So we had to get very intentional. And for the first game, Bethune-Cookman, right, which is not a big draw, but we made sure we were intentional about getting our students out. We had buses. We bussed them over there. We gave them free food. We had a tailgate for them. We had more students at the Bethune-Cookman game than we've had since 2019, before the pandemic, right? So we have to be intentional about those things. Last thing I'm going to mention, because I know it's a little bit, I want to give time for you to ask all the questions you want to ask. One of the things that we have to do is get ourselves on a national stage. We have served this community, we've served this state, but we need to have broader visibility. One, when the number of students starts dropping, we need to have a bigger pool to draw from. 60% of our students come from Shelby County or surrounding areas. 83% of our students come from the state of Tennessee. That's fantastic. We are going to continue to serve our area, but we also know it's like, go back to having a customer. If 60% of your business is one customer, and that customer starts hurting, you start hurting, right? So we've got to have a bigger net. Athletics gives us that national stage to be on. One other visibility point is recently, about a year and a half ago, we obtained what's called R1 status, which is called the Research 1, puts us among the top 150 schools in the country in research. That puts us on a national stage as well. So we're going to continue to do those things that put us out there. All right, I'm going to stop talking because you can see I've got a lot to talk about, but I'm going to stop talking at you and ask you, what questions can I answer for you? What do you want to know what's going on?
Let me ask you to let me get the microphone for you because Allie forgot to mention, but we're streaming, so you can't hear the question on the streaming.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay. I really admire what Peyton Manning and his brother have done with College Bowl. And any thoughts on how to elevate academics in these students' eyes rather than, oh, that's just a nerd. I don't want to be like him and study hard. I want to go. Any ideas of how to, not as close to the level of sports, but maybe a little bit in that direction?
Yeah, I love the College Bowl. Part of it is making sure that we have programs that really kind of fit everybody, but then lead to those good outcomes, right? So it's not seen as, well, if you're an academic, then you're a nerd or a geek or whatever it may be, but leading to those good outcomes. But athletics does play a key role in helping attract those good students. And one of the things that people forget, or maybe I shouldn't say forget, probably don't know, is as we look at all these big conferences out there. Again, so I'm gonna pivot to athletics, but I'm gonna come back to what you asked. Is that these athletic conferences are actually built around the schools based upon academics. So, you know, I know it seems like, well, hey, the commissioner of a conference makes a decision, and they want to invite so-and-so in because they have good football or good basketball. Commissioners don't make the decisions. It's the presidents and the chancellors of those universities that make up the conference that make the decision. And they make that decision largely based upon the academic profile, not the athletic profile. So as we look to, you know, how we position ourselves, whether it's the ACC or Big 12 or whatever it may be, part of what we have to make sure that we have is the academic profile that would match that conference. And so academics, for the athletics, plays just as big a role as the success it does when we play football, which again goes back to we've got to have programs that students want to come here and major in and that lead to great outcomes. And you know, in our plan, we actually talk about really focusing on what we call STEM, you know, which is the science and technology, engineering, math, health, and business, because those are the areas that we see the biggest demand, both now, but certainly looking forward. I hope that kind of answered your question.
But the students don't know that. They don't realize that the role that academics play, do they? The students just think about sports.
Well, they don't, and that's part of what we have to do, right, is to make sure that we're attracting the right students and that they know about that, right? And again, it starts with admitting the right students and making sure that they're prepared. Because if we admit a student who's not prepared and they fail out, I mean, it hurts your academic standing for sure. And again, the student loses, we lose. We've got to do a better job on the front end.
Got a question?
Yes, sir.
Two-part question. I was glad that you led with the demographic, that I won't say tsunami, but surge that's not going to come to you. First part, there's been a lot in the media the last 10 days or 2 weeks about West Virginia and their decision to do away with programs and positions on the academic side, but failing to make any cuts on the administrative side. Hopefully, does your plan include administrative as well as academic cuts? And then there's a B question.
So right now, we're not planning on making any cuts because we're solid right now. Now, I will tell you what we did this past year was we did ask everybody to take a 3% budget cut, but that was only so that we had a 3% pool of funds that we could pull to the side and start investing in strategically. Because we know there's some things that we've got to do better in marketing and communications. A lot of the things we've talked about is about getting that message out. We've got to do marketing communications better. We've got to do better in our fundraising efforts. And that's a big part of being a public institution is raising funds. And then in our government relations, working more with our state. Those are all funding sources, so we've got to invest in those areas. But one of the things that West Virginia did that we are right now okay is that they planned for huge growth. And they invested a lot in buildings and these type of things. And the growth didn't come. So now you got all this capital expense and you're not filling them up. We actually have from our assessment here, we have I mentioned earlier, we have 22,000 students. We have the physical infrastructure to handle 27,500 students. So we can either stay the same, we could actually grow a little bit without additional investments in buildings, faculty, staff. We have the capacity for 27,500. So that works in our favor. So I don't anticipate right now, unless our enrollment really starts declining, that we'll have to take any cuts. And if we do have to take cuts, it'll be hard, but it'll be across the board, administrative, faculty, staff, the whole thing. I hope we don't get to that point. Yeah.
The second part, a disclaimer, I'm not an alumni. However, I have a wife and 2 daughters that are alumni.
Fantastic.
My oldest daughter, when she lost her daddy's scholarship, worked for 3 semesters with FedEx, throwing boxes,
Yep.
and had them pay her tuition.
Yes, sir.
And is quite proud of that fact. Is there any plan to reach out to other businesses and enterprises to encourage them to offer similar programs so that your students will have access to that.
Yes, sir. And you're talking about the FedEx program, what they call the LIFE program, which is fantastic, which enables any worker there to come and get their degree. We have similar programs with Walmart, with Amazon, and a few others, and we want to do more of that. And one of the things that, just anticipating what's going to happen with Blue Oval City coming in and them needing all these workers, we know one of the things that's going to happen is, again, they're going to be paying a good wage. We're going to have some of our people who would want to be students are going to go, you know what, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to work for Ford for a couple of years, but we know that if we lose them, we'll never get them back. So we want to get them started on taking some classes, maybe even courses that directly relate to their work at Ford, but kind of keep them engaged and then work with Ford to have that same type of program, even before they get fully open and going, so that we can anticipate. I mean, there's a lot of people be working there and in their supplier base. So absolutely, that's a great source that has been overlooked for a long time, is those students who are working, and we need to make it easy.
Other questions? Hold on. Get my exercise.
Thank you. Do you believe that the woke agenda and the global warming things are having an effect on students coming to college?
Well, we're out of time, it looks like. Let's talk about conference realignment. That'll be, I think, I tell you what saddens me, and that is that higher education has been put in the middle of the culture wars. And it saddens me because universities should be the place where students can go to figure that out for themselves, right? And whether they lean left or lean right or in the middle, they should figure that out on their own, and not feel that they should or should not go to college because I'm going to be indoctrinated one way or the other, or feel that once they get there, they're indoctrinated one way or the other. And I've had lots of discussions with both our state General Assembly folks, but also our federal folks. And I can tell you that what you read about is very different than actually what happens on college campuses. And look, we all know when you have 5,000 faculty and staff, are you going to have people who are probably doing or saying some things or out on the fringes where they shouldn't? Probably, but the vast majority are not. They're there to teach their accounting class. They're not there to indoctrinate a student into their way of their beliefs. But there's so much out there. I think it does. I think it does. And that's the sad part about it, right? Because again, college should be that place where you kind of figure out. I mean, one of the beautiful parts about my job, and I've been doing, I've been in higher education now for 30 years, is that this college, this 18 to 22-year-olds in particular, this is the most transformative time of their lives, right? It should be four of the best years of their life, and right now, because of the where we find ourselves, colleges and universities have been put in the middle of the cultural wars rather than those who really should stay completely out of it. And you know what? We're not blameless in that. Many universities have intentionally waded into that. I can tell you, we have not. We have not. I've told our folks two things when it comes to those. We are not here to take a stand, right? We're here to educate. In fact, my new provost made a statement the other day that we should put on a billboard that says, "We educate, not indoctrinate." That's what we do. And then we let you figure out, right, what it is that you believe. We're not going to tell you what you ought to believe, but educate you, and you figure out what you want to believe. So yeah, I think it does, unfortunately.
I have a question while I'm going across here. when Governor Haslam was in the governor's position, he expanded the Tennessee Promise for the sole purpose of increasing the percentage of adults in Tennessee that have post-secondary education. But that program does tuition free for the first 2 years, either a TCAP or a community college. Is the university seeing any rewards from that? Are those students coming over in the third year, or are they pretty much going with their certificates and their 2-year degrees? I'm just wondering how that affects y'all.
Well, so we have seen a significant decline in the number of students in this state who are going to get their 2-year, going to 2-year schools in particular, which is mind-boggling because it's free, right? So so part of it is a perception issue, right? There's still this view, well, if you go to a Southwest, then that's a kind of a lower tier, you don't want to go there. And I think we've approached it all wrong. So let me tell you what we're doing, and don't let me go too far here because I know we're out of time. But so here's what we're doing now. In the past, if a kid applied to the University of Memphis, a couple of things would happen. We'd look at the credentials and go, oh, you are an amazing student. You're in. We want you. Come on in. And then there would be others that would be on the other end would go, you know what? Sorry, you're declined. We wish you the best. And then there was this gray area, and that's where we would look and say, not sure if they're really, let them in. Well, here's what we're doing now. If a kid is clearly in, and with the standards that we're setting, then they get the letter saying, congratulations, you're in. If you're in that other area, we say, you know what, we know you want to come here because you applied. You're not quite ready to be successful. But what we're going to do is we're going to let you go to the 2-year school of your choice, and we're going to hold your hand. We're going to tell you what classes to take. And when you hit a milestone, because it may be you just need to take these 4 classes, and if you make a B or better, then you actually come back over. You don't have to reapply. And oh, by the way, while you're taking the classes at the 2-year school, we're going to give you a U of M ID. And you can go to the football games, you can go to the basketball games, you can come use your library. You're going to be in spirit with us and part of us, but you're going to have to get started over there because we want you to be successful. That will help drive the and by the way, when you go over that 2-year school, it's not going to cost you a penny, right? So you're saving money, you're going to be better prepared. We have just started that. We actually started as a pilot program this fall, but going forward, we are going to do that for all the students who apply. And we hope we drive hundreds of students who may have been discouraged that they were declined or that we probably let in they shouldn't have. We're going to get them over there, get them to where they can be successful, and then get them back over. And you know what? We ought to be doing that across the entire state.
Excellent. Last question.
Hey, I'm sorry to take up the time.
Yeah.
The transfer portal
Yes, sir.
and all the money that's being promised to the student athletes to switch schools, and I assume money is the key, if not one of them, for universities. What is University of Memphis? I prefer to call it Memphis State, but
I understand.
'cause that's where I went. But what are you doing to make sure Memphis, University of Memphis, benefits
Yeah.
from that against when you have competition from the SEC, the Big Ten,
Yep.
all the money schools?
Yep. So I'm assuming everybody knows what was asked here, what he's talking about. So NIL, name, image, likeness, money for students, in of itself, I think is a good thing. The transfer portal, in of itself, is a good thing. Together, it's free agency. And that's the shame of what's happening right now, is we're seeing these kids who are jumping around. I mean, after a year, they go somewhere else. And if they don't get to playing time or the NIL money, they go somewhere else. We're getting no loyalty from anybody, right? And you look, we are free agents. I mean, they are free agents, and we're just playing free agency. And I'm not blaming the students because they're chasing, some dollars that for some of these students the biggest dollars they've ever seen in their lives or their families' lives, right? So we've got to fix that. We have to fix that somehow. That's unsustainable. It's out of control. And it's why we're seeing some of these things now. If you've got deep pockets, then you're buying the best players. I'll tell you what we're trying to do to be competitive, and I applaud our coaches for being competitive without having the NIL money that some of these other schools have. But what it's forced us to do is, look, we can't raise NIL money ourselves, right? That has to be an independent agency. But where it has put us is, let's say that somebody gives to athletics each year, and let's say they normally give $10,000 a year to athletics. Well, now that NIL came along, everybody thought, well, everybody would keep giving their $10,000, and then they would give more to NIL, and that's not what's happening. People are saying, look, I'm going to give you $10,000. Where do you want me to give it? Do you want me to give it to the athletic department, or do you want me to give it to NIL? Because those are two different things. And what our athletic department has started doing is, like, we've got to have NIL money to be competitive. Now, so people are helping out the student athletes by going through the NIL, but what that leaves then is a bigger budget deficit because we're not getting those monies to help the athletic program. So it's an untenable process right now, and unsustainable. This cannot be sustained. There's several bills in Congress going through right now, and I'm usually not in favor of federal regulation, but there probably needs to be some federal oversight here. There's a couple of bills. We'll see if any of them see light of day. There's a couple of interesting ones. Tommy Tuberville, he has a bill, and he has an interesting thing in his, and that is if you take NIL money, you have to stay at the university for at least 3 years. It's an interesting concept. I don't think it'll ever see the light of day there because people will be opposed. But I know there's enough talk that there has to be some regulation. The NCAA has completely messed this thing up. And are we being recorded? But the situation we have is not sustainable. It's got to change because right now it's free agency. Thank you for your question.
No, how about finishing with that?
Okay, so
realignment.
So look,
Dr. Oath wants to know.
Yeah, there's a lot that's been going on over the last couple of years. We are not finished with the realignment. This latest move by the ACC, that's not the last move. There will be other moves. I think we'll end up with 4 super conferences that will end up with taking some more teams. We just have to make sure that we're doing a couple things. One, the question was asked earlier, we have to make sure that academically we are sound and strong, so when those presidents look at us, they know that academically we fit with that conference. We have to make sure that we're putting the very best athletes and on the field and on the court and have success. We are in a conference now that we need to win the conference. Because at that next move, there should be no doubt who the next best group of 5 schools is. Just no doubt. I mean, it shouldn't be, well, let's talk about these 7 schools. Let's just remove all doubt. We have to take care of business in the AAC because that's where we're at. And it can't be finishing middle of the pack. We need to be at the top of that pack to make sure that we are well positioned athletically and then taking care of business on the academic side to keep improving.
And that means in St. Louis this weekend, we need to beat the University of Missouri.
We need to be the remaining unbeaten Tiger team after this.
Absolutely. And then when basketball comes around, we put Florida Atlantic right below us, right?
That's exactly right.
Please join me in thanking President Bill Hardgrave. All right. I hope all of you are planning on staying for lunch. If you can stay for lunch, we don't have a fee, but it does cost us, so we'd appreciate your consideration of a $7 donation. Debbie, thank you. She's bringing stuff out from the kitchen. And Grant Caldwell is here. Grant's going to dismiss us, and I know as part of his prayer, it's our tradition that he will pray for you too and your job, Bill. So if you wouldn't mind joining Reverend Caldwell here.
Well, good. I guess it's technically morning still. You started out by saying you have the most difficult job in the country, and then after those questions, I think we all agree. But Dr. Hardgrave, thank you for all that you do. I mean, friends, the work that a university does. I mean, you touched on athletics, you touched on academics, you touched on business, you touched on navigating young adults from lower socioeconomics to middle. I mean, there's so much going on that a university does that leads to people flourishing. And when the gospel comes into contact with a city, it brings flourishing with it. And so much that you do is truly making a difference in the life of this city. So we are praying for you. We are thankful for you, and we're honored to be here with you today. So let's join in prayer together. Father, we just praise you and honor you for the ability to gather together to learn all that is going on at the University of Memphis, and we just pray and ask for your hand and your blessing to be over the college and to be over their students, to be over their faculty, and to be over Dr. Hardgrave specifically. Father, we just pray for his leadership. We just ask that you would give him wisdom and guidance. We pray as he began for all of the foolishness and stupidity that could happen at any given time from any given person on that campus. So we just pray into that you would give him wisdom and guidance, that you would give him just a gospel-centered approach to those things where, Father, we know that he probably has to own a lot of that foolishness and stupidity, even if he didn't cause it. And we just pray that as he does that, he would have the ability to see you that took on our foolishness and our mistakes on the person of your Son so that we can have life and flourishing. And so we just pray into that and pray into his leadership. We pray for the conversations and the meals that we will share together as well. And we'll just ask for your hand, to be honest. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.